Hey guys, Michael here. Today we're going to do something different because I've been hearing a lot of feedback from our fans about some recent choices of mine regarding my so-called hate speech directed at Elon Musk. Now, after taking some time to myself to be with my family and think about what you've all been saying, I'm ready to take a second to address all this stuff and let you guys, my true fam, know that I've been doing the work. And I'm deeply, deeply sorry if you felt offended when I called Twitter's tyrant a butt plug came to life with one finger on a keyboard and another finger on a button that says apartheid good. Okay, sorry guys. As you know, I'm not sorry at all. But also, does that make this video any less sincere than the average YouTube apology? Now, the format first famously parodied by YouTuber Peanut Butter Gamer in 2015.
So I really wanted to apologize. I'll go ahead and show you the clip of what I'm talking about here. It's from this part right about here where I'm trying to jump on these two Octo guys, and they drop 2 coins, and I just get one of them. Like, why didn't I get the second coin? I had two health.
This format has become an all-out trope, complete with obligatory tears, heavy sighs, and demonstrative angst for letting down the fans.
I really am sorry. And I guess most of all to the people in the community that just feel let down.
I know I've only let you guys down for real when the videos get too woke, when they're too woke. Because they're woke. It's no wonder that the format has lost all pretense of sincerity. Now, humans have a knack for spotting when someone's being disingenuous. And arguably, there's never been more bullshit more readily accessible than in this age of the influencer apology. So why has the YouTube apology video become such a trope? What does it mean when a YouTuber claims to be taking accountability for their racist tweet? And what does it say about our society that we continue to consume these videos even when we think they're just absolutely inauthentic? Well, let's find out in today's video on internet apologies. Are they deep or dumb? Now, from the somber thumbnails that wallpaper YouTube to the classic celebrity notes app apology, everywhere you scroll, someone with a lot of clout is deeply sorry about something. Recently, YouTuber turned Netflix star Colleen Ballinger, aka Miranda Sings, responded to allegations of grooming underage fans with a cutesy little ukulele ditty that predictably seems to have only made people more upset.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't realize that all of you are perfect, so please criticize.
It'd be sort of like if Elizabeth Holmes made a baritone-voiced electronic song about being sorry for stealing people's blood and giving them fake results. Now, Logan Paul famously apologized after venturing into the Japanese suicide forest and casually posting footage of an actual corpse.
I should have never posted the video. I should have put the cameras down and stopped recording what we were going through. There's a lot of things I should have done differently, but I didn't.
We'll do a lot on this channel, but our one line is we won't post a dead body. Unless it's a really funny one.
We showed over 400 naked dead bodies on our show Coffin Flop.
And in 2020, Shane Dawson fessed up to years of doing blackface because apparently he time traveled here from the 1920s and didn't know it was bad. Also, though, every 2 years, a contestant on The Bachelorette turns out to have done blackface in like 2017. So what are you gonna do?
The picture was from 2018 at an Old South antebellum party. So I think, you know, when you
hold that under the limbs,
it's not a good look.
No, it's not a good. Well, Rachel, is it a good look in 2018 or is it not a good look in 2021?
It's
because
not
there's
a
a big
good
difference.
look ever.
In this landscape, scholar Kate Douglas argues that the internet has become a global confession machine. Now, Douglas says confession can come from a desire to connect with others, but confession also comes from a desire to feel relief. Confessing can feel good. Just confess in the comments. Treat the comment section like I'm your whiskey drunk Irish American priest, and the comments are a confession booth. Be blessed, my children. And because we know that, maybe we suspect that YouTube confessional apologies are more about the confessor's catharsis than about fixing the problem they caused.
It's been really, really hard.
And perhaps we could even forgive the sometimes self-indulgent nature of the confession. But what really pickles our egg is the knowledge that YouTube apologies are often just carefully crafted performances. Digital magazine Pudding analyzed 34 YouTuber apology videos and found that fan reactions were far more favorable for videos which featured long, unedited takes rather than ones that follow the classic frenetic YouTube style of rapid-paced cutting. Not surprisingly, apology videos that didn't seem to invoke explicit branding or worse, engage in straight-up product promotion also were more successful. It seems that the less edited, produced, or branded the video feels, the more the apology resonates. Ironically, the clickbaity strategies honed by influencers to maximize views aren't great for manufacturing forgiveness from their viewers. While the online apology is a relatively new phenomena, it's a manifestation of something nearly eternal in human history. As philosopher Chloe Taylor writes, there is a transhistorical human need or psychological compulsion to confess. And believe it or not, the very crafted performance of penitence is not unique to Olivia Jade or Jenna Marbles, but has been around in various forms for ages. Okay, so to get back to the history of apologies, Michel Foucault writes about the concept of confession extensively, tracing some strains of modern confession culture, predictably, to the Catholic concept of penance. Penance originated amongst monks and monasteries, but grew to be obligatory for much of the population. Now, peasants, understandably, were at first reluctant to spill their guts to random power-hungry men in funny hats, but it quickly became a practical necessity for acceptance in society. Foucault writes, "We have since become a singularly confessing society. Confession plays a part in justice, medicine, education, family relationship, and love relations. In the most ordinary affairs of everyday life and in the most solemn rites, one confesses one's crimes, one's sins, one's thoughts and desires, one's illnesses and troubles. One goes about telling with the greatest precision whatever is most difficult to tell." If when I said in medicine, you thought to yourself, when do we confess in medicine? Let me tell you about this time I got a new doctor when I lived in Baltimore, and he was like, okay. And he was like, you ever have an eye opener? And I was like, what do you mean? He was like, a little something to get started in the day. And I realized this guy thought I was secretly an alcoholic, and he was trying to get me to admit that I drank in the morning by being like a cool doctor. And like, you ever have an eye opener? It's like, what the f? Importantly, Foucault also notes that since the Middle Ages, torture has accompanied confession like a shadow, and supported it when it could go no further. In other words, where there is the need for confession or a wrongdoing, there is the threat of torture, either in order to elicit the confession in the first place, or to further punish the sinner if their confession doesn't sufficiently atone for their wrongs. Confess! Confess! Foucault notes that the confession act is only valuable if there is someone being confessed to. In some Christian societies, public confession in a church was required, but increasingly it became a private matter between the confessor and a spiritual leader. Foucault writes, "The one who listened was not simply the forgiving master, the judge who condemned or acquitted. He was the master of truth." In other words, the act of confessing meant ceding a great deal of power to the church, both the power to access your sinful thoughts and desires, and then to decide how you should be punished for your horny subconscious. I wouldn't punish you because I wouldn't be like other priests. I would be like, go on, do it more, get it. And then they would fire me. Or maybe they wouldn't, I don't know. Thus, the content of a confession falls under Foucault's definition of power knowledge, whereby the gathering of knowledge becomes a means of protecting power and of strengthening systems of social control. Think about it. If you're forced to confess your every naughty thought or deed, you're more likely to self-police, stay in line, and accept existing social orders. This is why a lot of cults, stuff like Scientology and those NXIVM people, they have their members like videotape confessions of bad stuff they did so they can use them to blackmail them later. Can you imagine what they must have on Tom Cruise? I would love to watch that tape. And if your priest knows all of those dirty little secrets, he has a lot of power over you. Eventually, Foucault argued, the act of confession became enshrined in our culture. It soon manifested in things like the state policing of deviant sexuality, and even the rise of psychology. Now, Foucault argues that modern talk therapy is the modern corollary to the medieval confession. And that's why this video is brought to you by Better. He writes, the obligation to confess is now relayed through so many different points, is so deeply ingrained in us that we no longer perceive it as the effect of a power that constrains us. Of course, most young people don't confess to our spiritual leaders anymore. Scholar Norman Friesen takes Foucault's theories of confession into the digital age, where social media platforms encourage us to share or confess our innermost thoughts. Now, the power once ceded to priests is handed to your followers on Twitter. Oh, not Twitter, on X. So follow me on X if you like to go on X. Stupid man. Instead of the church deciding how many lashes you deserve for casually dropping slurs in your Twitch stream, judgment is rendered by CatFreak42069. The imbalance of power still exists. The mere act of confessing puts the confessor's fate in the hands of the listener. In other words, all of us. Of course, the online public doesn't have the same unilateral power as the medieval church, but they do have more than the fanboys and girls of yesteryear. It's easier than ever to mobilize campaigns of mean DMs, boycotts, and swatting that can hurt your career and upheave your life. Guys, 2 years ago, I said something on a podcast about Disney adults that was a joke, and this past week, someone made a bunch of accounts to start adding me in the Wisecrack thing, saying that I don't believe that children of abuse should get to experience Disney or something like that. It's bad. People get mad and they do crazy stuff. In this way, public pressure can force those who have done wrong to seek forgiveness, if only to return to business as usual. As such, the internet has fully brought back the public confession that's been laced through religious history. In earlier times, this took the form of what Foucault called exomologesis, a form of public penance that focused on the performative, in contrast to what goes down between you and Father Francis in the privacy of the confession box. Guys, I just want to say that, the writer of this script is not a good Catholic like me, so they're just taking tons of shots at the Roman Church. But if any Catholic leaders are watching, I'm a good Catholic boy, and I'm just doing my job.
If you support the Catholic Church, isn't that like the same thing as being an R. Kelly fan? I don't really see the difference. Only one's music is significantly better.
Foucault writes, exomologesis obeyed a law of dramatic emphasis and maximum theatricality. 2nd century Christian scholar Tertullian wrote that the person doing penance was supposed to cover themselves in ashes and wear a hair shirt, which I tested out, and I assure you is very itchy.
It's a little itchy. What's this thing made of?
Eyelashes!
They were required to prostrate themselves before the priest and hang on the skirts of widows, kissing their knees. Sounds weird. Around the same time, another Christian thinker wrote that penance required the confessor to prove their suffering, show their shame, make visible their humility, and exhibit modesty. What was the purpose of this humiliation? Well, according to Foucault, first, this publication was a way to rub out sin and to restore the purity acquired by baptism. Second, it was also to show a sinner as he is. That's the paradox at the heart of exomologesis. It rubs out the sin and yet reveals the sinner. Exposé is the heart of exomologesis. By publicly announcing yourself a sinner, sunlight works its proverbial disinfectant, and hopefully you'll become holy again.
Supposing we hit the body with a tremendous, whether it's ultraviolet or just very powerful light.
Now we can see the same performative aspect in the YouTube apology.
I'm sorry. I'm just sorry. I don't support this stuff. I don't believe this stuff.
The more suffering the sinner shows while owning up to their dog behavior, the more sincere they're perceived as being. Just as those medieval confessions that weren't intense enough merited additional torture, insufficient demonstration of social media supplication may yield additional punishment from the audience. So, the theatrics of the YouTube apology are not necessarily unprecedented, nor a deal breaker. Philosopher Nick Smith argues that we always expect apologies to have some element of performance or enactment. Of course, the issue with YouTube apologies is not that the apology includes a performance, but that the apology appears to include only a performance. What's more, the apology is in some ways inherently incomplete because the meaning and sincerity of it depends on the apologizer's future behavior. Still, our gut tells us that YouTuber apologies are often pretty insincere. The vloggers regret that they got caught doing a racism or a cannibalism sex, and they believe making a big show of apologizing will absolve them. Another good example is the time Justin Bieber pissed in a bucket at a restaurant and screamed, "F Bill Clinton."
Why gives it his
But for the church, penance was about more than embarrassing yourself. It was about transforming yourself. If done right, it could effectively sever the post-penance subject from the version of themselves that committed the sin. Penance was a sacred act. They went through penance, so they're no longer sinners, right? Now, the separation between the sinner part and the confessor part of your subjectivity pops up in a lot of online apologies when people insist things like,
I'm not that girl.
Or,
"It's not who I am, it's not what I represent."
Or,
I'm stupid, I was stupid, and I'm an idiot.
This form of confession effectively isolates the transgression as something outside of the person's totality. It's not who they really are, And so we watch the sinners suffer through penance, and in exchange for their troubles, forgive them. The implication that the suffering is done in exchange for forgiveness is made obvious when fans say of their favorite recently canceled celebrity, haven't they already been through enough? Shout out your favorite recently canceled celebrity in the comments. I'm trying to think if I have one. No, because I only like good people. Of course, the problem is, for all their tiers, YouTube apologies often lack some of the core requirements of an apology. As cultural critic Zeba Blay writes, a good apology must include the word sorry. Name the offense, take responsibility, show you understand the impact, ensure it won't recur, and make amends. Apologies, even between individuals, should not be mere declarations of disappointment in oneself. Rather, it ought to mean that the apologizer genuinely regrets their actions and intends to change their behavior. A core element of an apology is therefore the acknowledgement of the facts of what happened. What we get in YouTube apologies, very often, is all the apparent suffering without any of the honest acknowledgement or commitment to being better. On a personal level, well, this just registers to us as annoying. But when replicated on wider societal scales, apologies that are toothless actually become pretty sinister. In his book, I Was Wrong, The Meaning of Apologies, Smith discusses apologies for collective harm that might happen on a national level, ranging from slavery to civil war to other institutional violence. This is obviously way heavier than a beauty influencer on YouTube fessing up to hawking faulty lipsticks. But there is a similar challenge. The parties need to agree on the facts and acknowledge what happened. Of course, with historical traumas, there are many more participants with different interpretations of the events. Establishing a record is essential for healing, but fraught with challenges. Part of that is because, much like our celebs and influencers, world leaders struggle to apologize.
A few months ago, I told the American people I did not trade arms for hostages. My heart and my best intentions still tell me that's true, but the facts and the evidence tell me it is not.
Being president of the United States doesn't mean you're good at doing penance. As Smith writes, consider George H.W. Bush's defiant statement during the 1988 presidential campaign after a U.S. cruiser shot down an Iranian plane and killed 290 civilians.
I'll never apologize for the United States of America. Ever. I don't care what the facts are.
And even though Obama was mocked for his so-called Middle Eastern apology tour, where he spoke out about less savory aspects of American history, his comments really were actually rarely full-fledged apologies. Rather, they were more like acknowledgments we might not have always made the coolest choices in dealing with other nations, but hey, we're totes gonna try to do better next time.
And as I've said before, it constituted torture in my mind, and that's not who we are.
Sorry for all the dead relatives. But even when countries do apologize, that may still not be enough. That's because countries, just as often as people, may employ apologies to avoid actually having to take any meaningful steps to right their wrongs. As political scientist Jenny Edkins writes, when a government apologizes for wrongdoing in the past, this is an invocation of moral responsibility as an exemption from the responsibilities demanded under the law. Such apologies are made to deflect legal consequences. In other words, a well-worded apology on behalf of the US president about the harms of slavery becomes a replacement for, say, offering reparations to the descendants of enslaved people. Or like, oh, sorry, we stole all of your indigenous land. That was bad. Have the land back? What? Couldn't hear you. Oh, my connection's bad. Oh, call me back later. She asks, what does this apologizing and the sudden rash of memorials do? Does it acknowledge the voices of the victims? Or does it perhaps deny the trauma by gentrifying it? By treating the suffering as something that can be compensated for by mere words or the right statue, those responsible often skirt past any obligation to do something more meaningful. In this way, Edkins writes, apologies can be seen as part of a re-narrativization, and the apologizer often gets to write the narrative. And so the performance of online penance might be cathartic for those involved, or for some fans, straight up hilarious.
But right now, I done up.
But it doesn't ensure that the transgressor is going to meaningfully change, which is why it can feel so insincere. We've evolved past making sinners wear a hair shirt while they douse themselves in ashes. But in some ways, we're still asking the wrong things of those performing penance. Rather than looking for evidence of their own suffering in the wake of their wrongdoings, it's worth asking how they're going to do right by those they harmed. But what do you guys think? Is the YouTube apology genre just medieval penance for the terminally online? Should we expect more than a tearful video when our favorite influencer messes up? Or should we be cutting them a bit more slack? What does online accountability really look like? And has anybody gotten it right? Let us know in the comments, and also feel free to share some of your favorite apology videos. And a huge thanks to everyone for watching, for commenting, for liking, for subscribing, for doing all the stuff that keeps us afloat. We really appreciate it. And a huge thanks to our patrons. Our patrons, what are those? Let me tell you, they're people that support our channel directly, and in exchange they get videos early with no ads, extra content, access to our Discord server, and my undying love. And in the meantime, I'll see you later. This is the world that we live in, and I wish that we didn't live on it, and we were dead. Okay, it's a song I'm working on.